Shana Meyerson with YOGAthletica in Los Angeles, California. Here today to teach you how to do floating stick pose. You may want to have some blocks nearby. You don't actually need them per se, but it never hurts to have them just in case. First drill we're going to do is actually Navasana, boat position. Why? Because when you're working in your Navasana, you have to start to understand how the hip flexors engage to rise the legs. The problem that most people have when they're doing arm balances is they think it's about lifting the feet. It has nothing to do with the feet and everything to do with the things that lift the legs. In this scenario, hip flexors. If we were to take our Navasana and close it way up, it doesn't matter how far it's closed up. Notice how those hips really start to engage to take you there. Lower halfway down into your Ardha Navasana, and though we would normally consider this to be a core exercise, I want you to really focus on how the hip flexors are going to help to take you in and out of this pose. As I come back up, I pull the legs in closer to my chest. So a few of these, just to get those hips working. And notice that my feet never hit the floor, so I'm certainly not lifting my feet actively off the floor. It's my legs that are doing the talking. So after you know that you can do these, you're ready to move on to these. Hug your knees deeply to your chest and take your feet off the floor. Now, this is where you might want blocks nearby. In fact, I'll go ahead and start with the blocks instead of without them. You want the blocks hugging your hips, like they really love your hips, so that the heel of the palm, which is always in the middle of your block, is just in front of the line of your hip. Okay, with that nice hug, let's give it another hug. This time, legs are hugging in. When I hug with my arms, it takes all of the muscular effort really out of my core and out of my hip flexors, but I want you to pull your attention back to the core and hips. Start to engage so that your legs can stay in the same position even if you were to let go. So I got my knee boobs working for me. They don't drop like this. My feet, as if they're up on an imaginary floor or platform, I hug, reach out, notice how everything in my core and hips is working to keep me compact. Take the hands right in the middle of the blocks and see if you can push down to lift up. Now, if I lean forward, my feet are going to hit the floor, right? Because if I have too much forward moving energy, well, I fall forward. How do I counteract that? I need to sort of tuck my tailbone up to create a lift from beneath so that I'm moving with my tail almost in a bit of a scoop here. Knees are up, I press down and lift. As you press down and lift, you'll notice how the core and hips really need to engage. If my hips are not working, then I'm going to wind up with just these legs that just keep plopping to the floor. If my core is not working, nothing's working. So let's get this one right. You can get rid of your blocks if you want, but if you do this without blocks, remember it's flat palms. You'll see some advanced versions out there on Instagram and stuff with people on their fingertips. These are people with very highly trained fingertips. You don't want those thumbs turning backwards unless, of course, you really want a thumb injury. So either with or without the blocks, I hug, reach. Notice how my legs did not change position. They didn't fall or droop. They're hugging in. Hands come down. Hands are right in front of my hips. I press down to lift up, keeping the knees moving up, and tailbone sort of tucking under a little bit to create that space. You want to be able to get those two lifts because what happens is when we get into the floating stick, that energy is going to become so much more intense, and we're going to be adding in some quad strength as well. So we got those two things in place. Take your feet in front of you. You can take them together as if you're setting up for a table, but this is a mini table. So wherein a normal table is going to be about this long, I want you to shorten it just a few inches, okay? That's too much. Feet press down to lift up your hips. You don't have to go all the way up, because remember, you don't want your knees going past your ankles. And we're too short, I mean not short as human beings, we're too short in our stance to get our hips all the way up. Pressing strongly into your arms. Flex your feet so you're just on your heels. And push backwards, trying to get your tush as far behind you as possible and your chest way forward. Now, why is my chest going so far forward? Well, obviously, if I'm pushing something way back and my whole body goes with it, I'm going down. So I see a lot of people that they're able to press backwards, but they take their whole body and they're like, I don't understand why I keep falling. Well, check it out in my body. See if you can see it. If my whole body goes backwards, where's my body weight? Everything's behind me. Something's got to balance. So my chest goes way forward. And where is that pivot coming from? My hip flexors. So here we go. Up a little bit. Lift your toes. You do want to lift your toes on this one. Lean forward, almost like you're going to do a Paschimottanasana, and push that tush behind you. When you come back up, just take your feet flat. Let's try a few of those. Press, press, press. How far can your tush go back and your heart forward? You feel that? Along the shoulders too. It's a lot on a lot of things. Press. And let's do two more, because I think that makes 5 or maybe. Press. And press. Okay. There's a chance you're feeling some stuff just doing these drills. For me, it's a lot of shoulder. For you, it might be a lot of core. Hopefully, you're feeling it in your hip flexors. Now, to take that previous pose into my actual floating stick, the thing I must remember is that this is not about jumping my legs into the air, which is what I see all the time. Remember, that's just the equivalent of jumping in the air and calling it flying, okay? So this is not the effort on any level to push back and be like, If you have to jump the feet, you're not in a position of balance. And jumping them up into the air isn't going to magically create that fulcrum where we have balance between front and back, right? Right. I'd rather, and I know you're here to do whatever I'd rather you do, I'd rather you keep your feet on the floor and work this pose mindfully than just start hopping the feet up and down, because this is one of those poses where hopping just ain't going to help you. So, with your feet together or apart, it's really sort of up to you. When I say sort of, I mean it is. Lift your tush, press back just as we practiced before. Toes are off the floor, tush way back. And then, just as we did in our Navasana, can you start to close the gap between thighs and chest? Now, oddly enough, the muscle that I feel working the most when I do that are my quadriceps. These babies. So imagine that you're tensing up your quads. You're trying to make those super, super strong. Why? Because the hips are going to do the heavy lifting, but the quads have to do the heavy holding. And you've got some heavy legs there, kid. Not just you. Everybody does. So, as I come backwards, chest is forward, right? To balance out, my body's at sort of like a slant, head forward, tush back. My toes are in the air, no jumping. My hands come back. I press it back. And then see if you can, keep pressing back with your tush, forward with your heart, down with your hands, and up with your hips. Okay? Those quadriceps are going to get an unusually good workout from this posture. One more thing to remember. Whenever we're doing an arm balance, root and rebound. What does it mean? It means the more I press down, the more I go up. If your arms aren't working 110%, if your elbows are bent, you're not going to get up. Remember also, vertical lines will lift you higher than diagonal lines, right? Because vertical lines hit the floor faster. For example, going back to our previous pose, if I'm here and my arms are vertical, I could lift this far. I don't even have to demonstrate for you, I hope, that if I took my arms, let's take it to the extreme at a big diagonal, I'm not going anywhere, right? Diagonal lines are going to take me closer to the floor in this scenario. What does it mean for you? It means that when we take this pose, you want your arms right under your shoulders, not too wide and certainly not too narrow. Actually, I mean, your arms have to be wide enough for your butt to get through, so they have to be like a certain width, but try not to go wider than necessary. One more time. It's toes up, tush up, press and press your hips back and your heart forward, pressing into my palm of my hand, engaging my quads and my hip flexors to take me into my pose. Feet come down, and voila, you're a floating stick. That's what I got for you today. I hope this works out well for you. Have an awesome day. This is Shana Meyerson with YOGAthletica in Los Angeles, California. Remember that I also have full-length videos on my Vimeo channel if you want to do some full-length classes with me. Have a great day. I think I already said that, so make it a double great one.